Montana Territory, August 1883. The first thing Yates Alder saw was blood on the rocks bright against the pale dust at the foot of the cliff. Then he saw her. A woman crumpled like a broken wing, tangled in torn skirts and dried mud. Her chest rose in shallow, uneven pulls. One boot was missing. Her face was bruised, swollen along the cheekbone. And her hands scraped raw like she had clawed her way down before gravity did the rest. He jumped down from his horse without thinking. Hey, can you hear me? His voice cracked. He pressed 2 fingers to her throat. Faint pulse. Still breathing. Barely. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Her eyes fluttered open, then shut again. Yates pulled off his coat and laid it over her. You're all right now, he whispered, even if it was a lie for the moment. I got you. He worked fast. His canteen was mostly full. He tipped it to her lips, slow, watching as a few drops wet her tongue. She swallowed weakly. That was something. Then he checked her legs. One ankle looked bad, swollen, maybe broken. Dried blood traced down from her scalp. No way she walked out of here. He whistled once, sharp. His horse, Locket, trotted closer. Easy, girl, he muttered, tying the reins to a low branch. He set to work building a travois from saplings and his bedroll, lashing it tight. Then, as gently as he could, he lifted the woman into it. She moaned once. Her head lolled against his chest. Hold on, Yates said, voice low, steady. You're not dying today. His cabin sat an hour's ride north, tucked at the edge of a pine thicket. Yates had built it himself after leaving cattle work behind. These days, he trapped, hunted, lived quiet. Never figured someone else would end up depending on him again. Not since. He shook the thought off. Focus. He carried her inside and laid her on the cot. She stirred as he pulled a blanket over her, eyes flickering open again. Where am I? Her voice rasped. You're safe. He poured more water. You fell. I found you. She blinked slowly. I do not remember. That's all right. You do not need to yet. She tried to sit up. Pain streaked across her face. My name is Elira. Yates, he said, pulling a stool close. Yates Alder. She nodded once, then slipped back under. That night, she burned with fever. Yates stayed beside her, wiping sweat from her brow, coaxing her to drink. She mumbled names in her sleep. Faye. Fenton. Little hands. Laughter. Then sobs. Yates stared down at her, heart tightening. Children. By morning, her fever had broken. She woke, clear-eyed but pale. Are they here? She asked. Who? My children. Her voice broke. Faye is 6. Fenton is 3. I do not know where they are. Yates went still. You were alone when I found you. Her fingers curled in the blanket. He took them. My husband. He said I was not fit. He hit me. I tried to stop him. I followed their wagon, but I slipped. Yates swallowed hard, anger creeping into his chest. You remember where he was headed? Bozeman. He has family there. I will find them, Yates said, voice even. But first, we get you well. She looked at him, then really looked, and something passed between them. Not trust. Not yet. But a beginning. Over the next days, Elira healed slow. Her ankle was sprained, not broken. Her head cleared. She moved from the cot to the chair, wrapped in one of his flannel shirts. Her hair was thick and dark, streaked with dust. Her voice stayed quiet, but it held steel beneath the sorrow. Yates cooked simple meals, beans, rabbit stew, cornbread. She thanked him each time, eyes softening a little more. You live alone out here? She asked one evening. Yeah. By choice? He nodded. You seem good at being alone. I used to think so. She looked down, fingers tracing the rim of her cup. I thought I was too. Until I had them. Faye and Fenton. They gave me purpose. Yates leaned forward. You'll have that again. I promise you. She met his eyes. Why are you helping me? He paused before answering. Because someone should have helped you sooner. She blinked, then looked away. But her lips trembled. A week passed. Her ankle improved. She used a cane he carved for her out of pine. Each day, she walked a little farther. And each night, they sat by the stove together. She told him about Faye's love for songbirds. Fenton's habit of hiding under the table when he was scared. She cried once, quietly, and Yates did not speak, just reached out his hand over hers. She held on. On the 10th day, she stepped outside and stood in the sun. Her cheeks had color again. The bruises were fading. Yates stood beside her, arms crossed. "You ready for Bozeman?" he asked. She nodded. "I have to be." They packed that morning. She rode Lockett. He took his mare. It would take 4 days to reach Bozeman. They camped near a creek the first night. Yates built the fire while Elira warmed beans. He handed her a tin plate and their fingers brushed. She looked up. "You saved my life," she said. "You climbed that cliff for your children. I just came along after." She smiled, small and real. "Still, I would have died out there." He looked at her, heart-thudding. "You are not dying. Not now. Not ever." She stared at him a long moment. Then her hand reached for his, resting there, warm and steady. Neither of them pulled away. The second day on the trail brought cooler air and a pale sky stretched wide with high clouds. They passed through stretches of tall grass, scattered with cottonwoods. The sun moved slow, casting long shadows by early afternoon. Elira rode with her back straight now, eyes always scanning ahead, mouth pressed in a line. Yates noticed her grip on the saddle horn tightening as they approached a crossroads marked by a weathered post and a discarded horseshoe nailed into its base. "You all right?" he asked without turning in the saddle. She hesitated. "He used to stop here," she said. "When we traveled for trade, he'd let the horses rest. I'd fetch water from the stream east of those trees." Yates followed her gaze to a ribbon of willows in the distance. "You want to stop?" No, her voice was steady, but something in it had gone colder. "I don't want anything from those days." They pressed on. By dusk, they reached a low ridge where the land sloped into a basin of wheat stubble and shallow ravines. Yates led them down into a hollow where a fallen pine made a natural windbreak. He gathered kindling while Elira unsaddled Lockett slowly, testing her ankle with each shift of weight. When he brought her a tin of boiled oats with dried apples, she accepted it without a word. The fire between them cracked gently, orange light softening the harsh lines of her face. "My brother used to ride these parts," she said, watching the flames. "He ran horses from Miles City to Virginia City. Claimed he knew every watering hole between here and the Tetons." Yates set his plate down. "Where is he now?" "Dead. Caught a fever 5 winters ago. I named Fenton after him." He nodded once. "You ride like someone who's seen more than trouble." She looked across the fire at him. "I rode behind a man who liked to remind me I didn't know much. But I watched. I learned what mattered." The fire cracked again. Yates rubbed his thumb along the edge of his cup. "You think he'll still be in Bozeman?" "I don't know," she said. "He's clever when it suits him. Knows how to vanish." "Well," Yates said slowly, "I don't vanish easy. And I don't give up." She held his gaze for a breath. "I believe that." Later, while he checked the horses, he heard her humming under her breath, soft, unsure, like something half-remembered. When he turned, she was braiding her hair by the fire, face lit gold in the last of the day. He didn't say anything. Just watched her fingers work, quiet and sure, like they were making something whole again. They slept under separate blankets with the fire between them. But sometime before dawn, she shifted closer. Not touching. Just near enough that he could hear her breathing, not ragged with pain anymore, but slow and even. By the 3rd day, they reached a wagon track that bore signs of recent travel hoofprints. Broken twigs. A bit of burlap snagged on a thorn. Elira dismounted and studied it, her shirt tucked into a borrowed belt, her eyes sharp beneath the brim of a hat pulled low. "This is his kind of path," she said. "Off the main road, but not so rough he'd risk a wheel." Yates crouched beside the tracks. 2 wagons. A day's head start, maybe less. She looked west. "He won't expect anyone to come after him." "No," Yates said, rising. "But we're not just anyone." That evening, they made camp near an abandoned line shack. Elira built the fire this time. She worked in silence, her movements clean and methodical. Yates watched from the stoop, cleaning his rifle. When she sat beside him, she held a strip of jerky and a question in her eyes. "You ever have a family?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. "Had a little brother. Got lost in the blizzard of '79. We never found him." She drew in a breath, slow and careful. "I'm sorry." He nodded once. After that, I stopped keeping anyone close. Her fingers brushed his sleeve. But you didn't stay shut. No, he said. Not all the way. The wind picked up through the trees, rustling like dry paper. She leaned into his shoulder, not fully, not yet, but enough. I didn't think I'd feel safe again, she said. You are, he said, and meant it. They sat there until the fire dwindled low, neither speaking, neither moving away. When they turned in for the night, they slept closer than before. Not out of fear, not from cold, but because it felt right. In the morning, they rode on. The soil changed darker and finer beneath hooves as they rode into the Gallatin Valley. Hills softened into long, open stretches where wheat bent gently under the wind. Smoke from distant chimneys turned the sky a soft gray near the horizon. Somewhere beyond that haze lay Bozeman and whatever waited inside it. Elira said little that morning. Her jaw held tension that hadn't been there the night before, and her hands stayed tight on the reins, knuckles pale. Yates noticed she didn't look sideways anymore, only forward, as if any glance behind might weaken something she'd just managed to hold together. He didn't press her. By midday, they reached a fork in the road. One path curved toward town proper, the other veered south, where a cluster of farms sat along the river bottom. She slowed her horse, letting it nose the air. He had a cousin, she said. Owned cattle near the Gallatin. Claimed the boy could shoe a mule with a broken hand. Always bragging on him, like that made him decent. That where you think he took the children? It's where I'd go if I wanted to disappear among kin. Yates adjusted the rifle tied behind his saddle. Then that's where we go. They turned south. The trail narrowed past a stand of alder, the ground damp and smelling of moss. A pair of wild turkeys scattered into the brush ahead. Elira's eyes tracked every fence line, every curl of chimney smoke in the distance. By late afternoon, they came upon a boy of about 12 guiding a mule cart along the road's edge. His boots were too big, and he squinted against the sun, but his back was straight. Yates raised a hand. You from down river? The boy nodded slow. My uncle's place. He's got hogs. I'm hauling oat sweepings. Elira kept her horse still. You seen any children there lately? A girl with dark curls, and a younger boy with a limp in his left leg. The boy blinked. Yeah, they been there near a week. Girl sings all the time. The little one don't talk much. My aunt says they're just visiting. Elira's fingers clutched the reins tighter. Their names are Faye and Fenton. They're mine. The boy looked from her to Yates. His voice dropped. Their pa don't let him out much. Said their mama ran off. That true? Elira's voice didn't shake. No, Yates reached into his coat and pulled out a tin of dried fruit. You didn't see us, he said, handing it over. The boy took it slow, then turned the mule cart back toward the trees without another word. They rode harder after that. The sun dipped low, turning the grasses gold. A pair of hawks circled high above, silent and sharp-eyed. Near dusk, they spotted the house, a squat frame of weathered wood set back from the road, with smoke rising from a crooked chimney and a lean-to sagging against the barn. A dog barked once, then stopped. A wagon stood in the yard, its canvas rolled up. Yates dismounted first. You stay behind me. Let me speak first. Elira nodded, but her feet were already on the ground. She didn't wait for his lead. They crossed the yard just as a man stepped out onto the porch. His beard was trimmed close, shirt sleeves rolled up, a pistol tucked plainly at his waist. He froze when he saw her. Elira. She didn't flinch. Where are they? He stepped down a single stair. You shouldn't be here. You had your chance. Yates stepped between them, his voice low. You're going to bring them out now, or I will go in and take them. The man's eyes narrowed. You think you've got the law behind you? I don't need it, Yates said. All I need's the truth. And it's standing right here. The door creaked behind them. A woman's voice called out. They're in the back room. I never wanted them here. Elira pushed past, through the doorway, her boots echoing on the wood floor. Then a cry, sharp, high, unmistakable. Mama! Yates stood still as the man's mouth tightened. But he didn't draw, didn't move. Moments later, Elira stepped back onto the porch, Faye in her arms, Fenton clinging to her skirts. Her face was wet with tears, but her spine was straight, her voice clear. "We're leaving." The man looked at the children, then back at her. "You won't make it easy for them, Elira. You never did." She didn't answer him. She turned, gathered both children close, and walked to the horses. Yates waited until they were mounted, then followed. He didn't speak again until the house was well behind them and the road opened wide before them. Faye rode in front of Elira, arms wrapped tight, her voice a soft hum near her mother's ear. Fenton rode with Yates, small hands gripping the saddle horn. He hadn't spoken a word. Elira looked over once, her gaze meeting Yates's across the space between them. It was a look full of something new, no longer fear, not quite relief, but the beginning of something steadier. "I didn't think I'd ever hold them again," she said. "You will every day now," Yates replied. "As long as you want to." She didn't look away. "I think I want more than that." He nodded once. "So do I." They rode on, the sun setting behind them, the road ahead quiet and clear. The valley stretched behind them in a hush of morning light, soft and pale like a new beginning. They'd left the cousins' farm before sunup, taking the long way around Bozeman, keeping to the edges of fields and the cover of trees. Faye rode with Elira, her arms wound tight around her mother's waist, while Fenton, still silent, rested his cheek against Yates's chest, eyes wide and steady, watching every movement of the horse's ears. They made slow progress, not from weariness, but because Elira kept glancing back, not in fear, but to check on her children. Her gaze lingered on them often, as if she were still convincing herself they were real. Yates noticed the way her shoulders eased only when both children were asleep, their small bodies slumped in trust. He didn't speak, not then. He just kept them moving north, toward the cabin, toward quiet. They reached the pines by late afternoon. The air felt different, cooler, with the scent of moss rising from the ground. Faye pointed at a bird overhead and whispered something into her mother's ear. Elira smiled, faint and fleeting, and kissed the girl's temple. Yates opened the cabin door, and Fenton hesitated on the threshold. Elira crouched beside him. "You remember when I told you about the man who helped me?" Fenton nodded without looking up. "This is his home. And he says we're welcome." The boy's eyes flicked to Yates, then back to his mother. After a beat, he took her hand and stepped inside. Yates stayed outside a while, gathering wood, checking the snare lines. When he returned, Faye was curled in a quilt on the cot, thumb tucked into her palm, and Fenton was asleep on a folded blanket near the hearth. Elira sat with her knees drawn to her chest, watching the fire. She didn't turn when he entered. "You built this place yourself?" she asked. "Every board." She ran her fingers along the edge of the chair. "It feels like a place meant for healing." He set down the pack and crouched beside it. "I built it to be still. I don't think I understood what that meant until you came." Her eyes met his then, and this time there was no hesitation behind them. "You didn't ask me for anything, not even my story. I didn't need it." Elira looked at her hands. "I used to think I only had value if I endured quietly, that if I stayed, it might soften him, that if I left, I'd be alone. You're not alone now." She reached for him, then not tentative, not uncertain, but as someone who knew what she wanted. Her hand found his, warm and dry and sure. "I want to stay," she said. "Not just for tonight, not just till the bruises fade." Yates tangled his fingers with hers. "I want you here. You and them." She exhaled, a sound that wasn't quite a sob, but something looser, something released. That evening, while she bathed the children in a tin basin near the fire, Yates stepped outside to give her space. He watched the sky darken through the trees, stars pricking through the navy blue, the air cooling against his neck. When he came back in, Faye was asleep again, curled beside her brother. Elira was braiding her damp hair, her back to the fire, face turned toward him. "They asked if we'd leave again." "What did you tell them?" "That we're home now." Yates knelt beside her. "You are." She leaned into him, her head against his shoulder, the firelight dancing across her face. "You found me when I didn't know I could be found." "I wasn't looking for anyone," he said softly. "But I saw you, and I couldn't walk away." She turned her face toward his, her breath warm against his cheek. You didn't just save me, Yates. You gave me back the part of myself I thought was gone. He kissed her then, not urgent, not seeking, just a quiet, steady joining of two people who no longer had to carry their grief alone. She rested her forehead against his. I'd like to wake up beside you tomorrow. You will, he said. And every day after, if you want it. I do. They sat there, wrapped in the hush of soft breathing and cooling embers, with the weight of sorrow behind them and the shape of hope beginning to form in the room. Outside, the wind shifted, gentle through the pines, as if the world itself had exhaled. Snow fell soft and slow across the clearing, catching in the hollows of the pines and silvering the cabin roof. It was late December now, and the days had shortened into long stretches of quiet work and fire-warmed evenings. Yates split wood in the lean-to, the axe biting clean into pine knots, his breath rising in clouds. From inside, the low sound of Elira's voice carried, reading to Faye from a book she'd found in town. Fenton was somewhere nearby, he never strayed far, likely tracing shapes in the frost on the window panes. Yates paused, rubbing his shoulder. The woodpile had grown taller these past weeks. So had the feeling that the life they were building wasn't something fragile or fleeting anymore. It had settled around them thick and steady, like fresh snow, quiet, but sure. He set the axe aside and stepped into the cabin. The smell of stew filled the room, rich and peppered. Faye sat near the fire, cross-legged, holding a wooden doll Yates had carved from a branch of juniper. Fenton lay on the braided rug beside her, tapping two carved horses together in a rhythm only he understood. Elira stood at the stove, spoon in hand, her sleeves rolled to the elbow and her hair pulled back with a twist of wool ribbon. She turned when she heard the door, and he could feel the warmth in her gaze even before she smiled. You've been out there a while, she said. Cold doesn't wait, he replied, stepping out of his boots. But it's all stacked. She stirred the pot once, then lowered the flame. I was thinking, she said, glancing toward the children, we should teach Faye to write her name. She's asking letters now. She's ready, he said. Elira leaned against the table, watching the firelight flicker along the floorboards. I never imagined this kind of peace. Not after everything. And now it feels like it's always been here. Feels earned to me, Yates said, crossing the room. He rested his palm against the side of her neck, just beneath her ear. You fought for it harder than most ever will. She closed her eyes briefly, then leaned into his hand. Do you regret it? Letting us stay? He didn't answer, not with words. He kissed her, slow and certain, and she answered him with the same quiet urgency. When they pulled back, her eyes were damp, but steady. Fenton tugged at Yates's pant leg. Hungry, little man? Yates crouched beside him and helped him up. Let's eat, then. They sat together around the table. Elira ladled stew into bowls while Faye recited the alphabet under her breath. Fenton, still quiet, leaned his head against Yates's arm as he ate, content just to listen. After supper, Yates brought out a tin. Got something from town last week. Thought we'd try it tonight. He opened it to reveal a small bundle of beeswax candles wrapped in cotton. For the tree, he said simply. Faye's eyes widened. Like stars. Just like stars. They tied the candles with string to the pine Elira and Faye had decorated earlier that week, and when they were lit, their glow filled the room with a hush deeper than silence. Fenton reached for Elira's hand. Faye curled against Yates's side, her head under his chin. Later, after the children were tucked beneath quilts stitched from old shirts and flour sacks, Elira found Yates outside, standing just beyond the porch. The moon was high, casting the snow in shades of pearl and blue. She stepped beside him, arms wrapped around herself. You don't talk much about what came before, but I know something broke in you once. He nodded, gaze fixed on the woods. I carried it like it was all I had left. But it's different now. She touched his arm. Because of them? He turned to her. Because of you. She rested her forehead against his chest. I want to marry you, she said softly. Not for safety. Not because it's expected. But because I know what I am now. And I want to be the beside you. His breath caught once in his throat. Then he wrapped both arms around her and held on. Then let's do it, he said. Right here. Right soon. They married the next morning under the boughs of the tallest pine, with the children bundled in wool and sitting on a log Yates had scrubbed clean. The snow was still falling, but soft, like a blessing. Elira wore a dress she'd sewn from muslin she'd bartered for in the fall. Faye tucked a sprig of juniper into her mother's braid. Yates wore his cleanest shirt and the coat he'd rescued her in, the hem still stained faintly near the cuff. They said their vows with hands clasped and voices steady. No preacher, no papers, just truth, spoken between two people who had lost and found enough to know what mattered. Fenton held Elira's hand the whole time. Faye leaned into Yates's side after. "You're my papa now," she said, without question. He blinked once, then nodded. "Yeah, I am." That night, they lit the candles again and sat long after the children slept. Elira rested her head on his shoulder, her hand in his. "This is the life I never thought I'd have," she whispered. He kissed her temple. "We built it together." "I love you," she said, not as a confession, but as a truth already known. "I love you," he said, and meant it with every part of him. The fire burned low. The snow kept falling. And inside that cabin, they stayed two people who had been broken and mended, who had chosen one another, and who would never again be alone.